Good evening, ladies, gentlemen. Nice to see such a packed council chambers tonight. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Council of the Municipality of Thames Centre. The date is Monday, June the 12th, 2023. The time is 5:02 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting to order. I've been advised that there are no additions to the agenda. And at this time, I'd like to ask if any member of council has any disclosure of pecuniary interest that they wish to declare. Seeing none, I actually do have an announcement tonight. So before our meeting gets going here, I'd like to take a moment to introduce to all of you in the chambers here and to anyone watching on the online stream. Our new Chief Administrative Officer is with us here tonight, Mr. David Barrick. This is David's very first day on the job. And as you can see, we want to get him going and we've thrown him right into council meeting on his first day. So talk about feet to the fire. We're going to put him to work, and I know that we're looking forward to his leadership. And over the next little while, we'll begin to get to know some of the members, not only of staff, but hopefully some of our residents and our business owners, and generally get him to find his way around Thames Centre. David is new to this area, and I know that the municipality will make him feel welcome wherever he goes. And just to finish off, I'd also like to say, last but not least, a very personal thanks to Michelle Casavecchia-Summer, who stepped up so admirably to handle things while we were searching for our new CAO. I think she thought it was going to be a placeholder, but she ended up spending a little more time here than she might have anticipated, which is it interrupted her golf game and her retirement. So thank you very much, Michelle. So that being said, this year, I'd like to ask Karen Gress to come forward to for a presentation of the Senior of the Year Award.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I'm the Senior Center Coordinator, and I'm excited to present the award to Helen Bendel. Come on up, Helen. And I'm going to read this just because I don't want to forget anything. But Helen Bendel is our Senior of the Year for 2023. She has been a hardworking and dedicated volunteer at the Senior Center for close to 30 years. Helen has a quiet but witty way about her, and she completes her volunteer tasks with experience and expertise. She provides her assistance at every hot meal and every garage sale and the bazaars. Helen doesn't look for any accolades and finds attention like this embarrassing, but we really feel she deserves kudos for the many years of devotion to the Lions Senior Center. Thank you, Helen, for being a great volunteer, a wonderful person, and a good friend. Congratulations.
And Helen, on behalf of council and municipality, we'd like to present you with the Senior of the Year Award.
But I had so much fun doing this.
Oh, that's good. We need people like you.
And these are for you, and look, they match your outfit.
Yeah,
I'll carry them for you. Want to get your picture taken?
You're looking on the other side, right?
You're like,
Did you get a good one, Scott?
Try it.
So we have some other acknowledgements that we'd like to make tonight, and this goes with the acknowledgement of our fire services. So tonight, council will be recognizing some of our very remarkable people in our community, our volunteer firefighters. Volunteer firefighters are without a doubt an invaluable asset to our Thames Centre Fire Department. The residents of our communities sleep peacefully in their beds at night, usually unaware of the commitment made by our local volunteers. These firefighters regularly put their own lives on the line in order to save other people and property in Thames Centre. When the pager goes off, sometimes in the middle of the night, they jump out of bed knowing that their community needs them. Often they give up their holidays, their free time, and on many occasions even sacrifice their day jobs to protect others. So on behalf of the council and the staff of Thames Centre, I want you to know that we are grateful and deeply appreciative of the time that each and every one of you spend away from your family and the personal risks that you take as volunteer firefighters to protect us. Several of our Thames Centre volunteer firefighters have achieved significant milestones in their commitment and dedication to their communities. And this evening, we want to recognize their long service and show council's appreciation for their commitment and hard work in keeping our community safe. So at this time, I'd like to ask Rick Sager and Ken Armstrong to join me in presenting the Long Service Awards. We have, she went through them. These are the ones for Thursday. I know you would know about it. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Dave Grohl there. No. Steve Galloway. This side. Congratulations, thank you. Chris Green. Congratulations. I think I'm done. Mike Coles. Blair Chown. Rob Hanson. That's a 20-year.
So these gentlemen, I think, wear the 20-year, is it? 20-year service? Congratulations, fellas.
Oh. Thought I ducked out of one of these.
Class for
Good, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the next group is for 25 years of service to the community.
David Van Dyke.
Doesn't matter.
Gary Spurgeon. Dan Graham. Thank you. Gary Kelly. Oh, I don't know this next one. He's Kevin Armstrong. Yes. Almost give him two there. Thank you. Mike Fox. Thank you very much. Michael. Sure. Yeah, that's fine. It's fine.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh,
thank you.
So that's it for 25
Yeah.
years. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, squeeze together. So the next group is 30 years, remarkable, 30 years.
Scott Kerr. Mark Summers. Thank you. Doug Hafner. Blair Stevens. Mark Armstrong.
Okay, the next group is for 35 years.
Wayne Summers. Kevin Wallace. Ron Lewis. Les Fox. They do it at the end. Tim Walker. I get the pleasure to do another one over here. Rick Sager.
And there's the group photo, and then we will have one more. Okay. You.
We have one more, 45 years, Ken Armstrong.
Don't forget that.
This is line, I'm gonna read that.
One in the center.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You didn't get your pen. You didn't get your pen. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. So we'll resume the meeting to a less fun part of it, eh?
I'm not going to take this personally that everybody just walked out as soon as they heard I was going to speak.
And so I'd like to introduce to you our auditor for the municipality, Christine Scrimmager. She's going to give us our financial reports. So if you'd like to go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. All right, I will go through the audited financial statements page by page. Hopefully, any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer. And please don't hesitate to ask me them as we're going through them. So these are the draft audited financial statements for the municipality for the year ended December 31st, 2022. They are draft because until those charged with governance under the Canadian auditing standards passes them, they are in draft format. Hopefully tonight they do get approved and then we can finalize them. And I know that your treasurer is madly working on the FIR to get it finalized and sent off. I do want to take this opportunity to thank the treasurer and her staff for all the work that they do to prepare for the audit. They do excellent working papers, as I'm sure you know, and we have very few journal entries in any of our given years. So I just wanted to thank them for their help through the process. All right, so let's move through the pages. And then, as I said, let me know if there's any questions. The independent auditor's report states that there is nothing materially incorrect in these financial statements. We set materiality each year based on your gross revenues. And for 2022, it was $280,000. However, that doesn't mean we only look at transactions over 280,000. Every transaction that flows through the municipality is eligible for statistical sampling. We go through taxation revenue, other forms of revenue, your purchases, and then your payroll. So we do cycle through all of those transactions and pick a statistical sample of those. And having done all that work, we're confident that we can sign this report as an unqualified opinion. And as I mentioned, it is dated as of today's date, which is hopefully the date council approves them. Moving forward to the consolidated statement of financial position. So these are financial statements under PSAB. So they look a little different than what you see in the for-profit world. So any of you that may have had some experience there, I'll try and highlight the differences just to keep you informed on what these present. So when I look at a set of municipal financial statements, I've probably been in this business almost 40 years. And the first thing I look at is the line called net financial assets, which is about 3/4 of the way down the page. That it would be the amount of money that you would have as municipality in the bank at the end of the day if everyone paid you what they owed you and you paid off all of your liabilities. And you can see there at the end of 2021, we were at 4.7 million. We're now at 6.2 million. So about a $1.5 million increase, which at the end of the day almost equates to what your surplus was for the year, which I know that your treasurer has given you a report on that, and those transactions have been reflected. Everything below that line are assets that you need to have in place to provide the services you do. So these are your things like roads, water, wastewater, which are the major ones, as you would be well aware. And what I now look at is whether or not you are maintaining those assets or replacing those assets at least equal to the amount of amortization. So amortization is depreciation. It used to be called, we now refer to it as amortization. It's the using up of your assets over time. And so as you use up your assets, it makes sense to want to replace those assets. I will remind you that the amortization is based on historical costs, so the cost of the original cost of those assets. And so we want to see assets being replaced at least equal to that amortization, and hopefully more so. And in fact, that's definitely the case this year. If you add the two lines, tangible capital assets and capital work in progress, you actually have a 6.2 million increase plus the amortization of about 5 million. So you had a very busy year with capital, as I'm sure you're well aware. The other thing I look at is the net long-term liability. So how much debt are we taking in to replace those assets that I just mentioned? And as you can see, the long-term liabilities is going down, meaning you did not issue any new debt this past year, which other than through municipal drains, but nothing with regards to your capital assets. And so that also is a good indicator of your financial stability. That's all my comments on the statement of financial position, unless anyone has anything that they'd like to ask. All right, moving forward. So this is where it gets a little tricky with the PSAB financial statements. So I'll do my best to explain it. Your budget, so this is the standard format for a PSAB set of financial statements, the budget for the current year, the actual for the current year, and then the prior year's actual. And a couple things to comment on. In the budget for 2022 or any other year, you don't budget what's called amortization, which I've referred to before. I also referred to the fact that it was 5.1 million for 2022. So keep that in mind as we go down through this. When I compare the revenues budget to actual, which the budget is obviously what council has approved, you'll see that we are about $2 million over budget, just under that amount. Couple reasons for that. Under user charges, that the increase there from budget is almost all in the environmental services area, and those environmental services maintain their own separate surplus, so that doesn't affect your general tax rate calculations. They water and wastewater, as I said, maintain their own surpluses and closed out at the end of each year. And then the other number that sticks out is the investment income. So again, if you remember when we were doing budget for 2022, interest rates were negligible at best. That has obviously increased during this past year, and we were able to take advantage of that. The other comment on that would be that because all of the capital projects were not completed, we did not need to remove as much money from the reserves, and therefore we also earned a higher rate of interest because of that. So that explains the revenues and budget to actual. So as I said, under expenditures, if you take the total of 16 26.6 million for the budget, and you look at 21.3 million of actual, that doesn't mean that you overspent by that 5 million. In fact, that 5 million is that amortization that I mentioned. And so it's not in the budgeted column, but it is in the actual column. And again, when I look at actual 2022 to 2021, both of those would have amortization in them, but I'll remind you that 2021 was almost totally COVID related. So if you think of what we were doing in 2021 versus 2022, obviously the areas such as recreation were not as busy, and therefore that's reflected in the increase from 2021 to 2022. So that excess of revenue over expenditure before other, again, very consistent. Last year it was 594,000, this year 538. So that means that your operating revenues are covering the costs of your operations as well as the amortization, which is another indicator that we want to see. We don't want to see that number in a negative position. Everything below that line are items that relate to capital. So we don't include them as operations because they fluctuate significantly from year to year, depending on what projects get finished and what grants we are eligible for, as well as what DCs, that federal gas tax, OCIF, those kinds of revenues that we can recognize in a year. We can only recognize those up to the point of what the projects are completed. And because they weren't all completed by the end of the year, therefore we didn't be able to recognize them all. But overall, consistent to last year, and that's just between the two categories there. Coming down to that accumulated surplus end of the year, 149 million, and we'll get to what makes that up in a moment, but most of that is, as I said, invested in capital assets. Any question on that statement at all? I know I speak a lot of accounting jargon, but hopefully. The next statement is a consolidated statement of cash flows. I won't spend a lot of time on this. This is the increases and decreases of the non-cash items on the balance sheet. And as you can see, the large dollar numbers are related to capital and the financing of that capital. And the next statement, these are all required statements under PSEB financial statements. The next statement just zeroes in on that capital only piece. And so you can see the acquisition of capital assets as well as the change in the work in progress. So close to $12 million of new assets versus the 5.1 million that I've referred to a couple of times of the amortization. Then we get to the notes to the financial statements. These are standard notes that you'll see in any municipal set of statements. I'm just going to highlight a couple of them unless anyone has any questions on them. Note number 7 shows your net long-term liabilities. And again, there's where you can see the decreases over the year from last year. We did pay off the one, those of you who have been around for a while, there was some loans payable, non-interest bearing loans payable through the county. That is now completed. And then note number 9 breaks down the surplus, as I mentioned. And so you can see here of the 149 million, 133 of that is invested in tangible capital assets. And then the other indicator I'm always looking at is making sure your reserves are staying healthy. And you can see there, although we had a significant amount of capital with that addition of the surplus and 1.4 million, which was your surplus, which I know you approved the transfer to the reserves. They have maintained what the level of last year, just a little increase there overall. There are two schedules. I don't have any other comments on the notes. There are two schedules at the back. One is the breakdown of the tangible capital assets by component. So this is, and as you can see, infrastructure, which would be the roads, water, wastewater, storm, is obviously the significant amount, about 60% of your total assets. And then the last schedule is a requirement of to break it down by segments. So the FIR that's filed with the province is based on these same segments, these functions, they're called functions. And so we break down your revenues and expenditures by those same functions, which this is then becomes a segue between your audited financial statements and the FIR that's filed with the province. You also have in your package the trust fund, which is the Dorchester Cemetery, and you can see it's increased by the sales of the various plots and monuments. And I don't have a lot of comments on that. It's just a requirement to be completed. And then in your package, there's also a letter of representation that just states that I've been made aware of all of the items that I need to be made aware of, and journal entries that have been posted. And as you can see, most of them deal with tangible capital assets, bringing the financial statements into a PSAB format.
Thank you, Christine. Does any member of council have any questions? Danielle?
Through your worship, of course, I have to have questions. I'm an accountant. So yeah,
I
just
heard there was one here, so that's great. I'd be disappointed if you didn't ask something.
I don't want to let you down. So just with respect to any risks or estimates from activity in FY22, anything that could impact this year's financial results?
Not anything that I'm aware of at this moment. There's always, I mean, there can always be legal issues that would happen, but that would be out of my preview at this point. And the only real significant estimates that you make, there is an allowance for doubtful accounts, but it's pretty minimal because of the nature of the organization. It's not like for profit where we always can get our money through tax sale and things like that. The other piece would be the amortization calculation, but that really only affects the TCAs and the capital surplus as such.
Okay, yeah, that was kind of like my next question as well with respect to, like, I noticed that like the accounts receivable went up a little bit. Is there any risk, or is there like a bad debt provision in there?
We do. We look at that, and typically things like fire calls, for instance, would be one where we're not able to collect them, and so. But again, it's very minimal here because your biggest taxes are taxes receivable or items that you can put on a property taxation bill. So you can add items to their bill in addition to the property taxes. So there's a pretty good, and then the rest of your receivables, the biggest one would be your HST, which is obviously larger this year because of the activity that you had going on with WIP, the work in progress for the capital, and then some government grants, which there was one owing regarding the County of Middlesex and their share of some of the road projects. So, and then again, that was received some subsequent to year end.
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Any other questions?
Okay,
All
I
right.
just have one other comment. So we always
Okay.
look at things to improve and letter management letter points. And I don't have a management letter as such, but I did. We've talked about this in prior council meetings when I've done presentations, and just to keep on top of the work in progress. So you can see if you come to page 3 of my report, last year it was about $4 million. This year it's 6.5 million. That's a significant increase in work in progress. That means we're not getting projects done in the year that we budgeted them, and then we're carrying them over and then adding the next year's capital budget to it, which then just perpetuates the problem. So just encouragement to get the capital projects that are in progress now finished and then move on to the newer ones. And I know that's been mentioned before, so I'm not saying anything new, but I just wanted to make that comment.
Oh, that's valid. Thanks very much. No other questions then from council? Okay,
Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you. At this point then, that we have a motion before us that the following documents, year ending December 31st, 2022, for the municipality of Thames Centre be approved. It's the 2022 audited consolidated financial statements, the 2022 audited trust fund financial statements, and the letter of representation prepared by Christine Scrimmager and Company for the municipality of Thames Centre. Do I have a mover for that? Moved by Deputy Mayor Smyber and seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Christine. It was great to meet you. See you next year at this time. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is 5.4, the Community Services Master Plan Update. Monteith Brown Planning Consultants and Tucker Reed and Associates. Are they coming? Oh, there they are. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, members of council and public. I'm Todd Brown with Monteith Brown Planning.
And joining me today is Dennis Kwan, Senior Planner with our firm. Dennis is going to run us through a number of slides to give you some background on the status of the master plan, and then we'll be pleased to answer any questions that you may have. So I'll turn it over to Dennis.
Thank you, Todd. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I will just share my screen here and we can get going. Okay. Good evening, everyone. As Todd mentioned, we're here tonight to present to council our background research and consultation findings tonight. And then we will also discuss our next steps and respond to any questions that the council may have here. The Community Services and Facilities Master Plan will guide and manage the development of parks, facilities, programs, and services over the next 10 years. It will be looking at infrastructure, including indoor and outdoor recreation facilities, parks and open spaces, and service delivery, including policies, programming, partnerships, and other related areas. We've completed phase 1 of the master plan, which included the background research and consultation. So recommendations haven't been developed yet, but that will come in the next phase once we get into the needs assessments and developing the draft master plan. So that will occur in phase 2. And phase 3 is where we'll be testing and finalizing the master plan. The background and consultation activities that we undertook to date form the foundation of the master plan. So it included a number of inputs, such as reviewing key background documents, such as your official plan, looking at the community profile and key trends in parks and recreation. We also looked at your inventory to understand what's currently on the ground and undertook site visits. We reviewed the usage data, as well as we engaged the public to collect community input. In terms of the community, the Thames Centre has a 2021 census population of just under 14,000 residents. And over the next 10 years, the municipality is expected to grow to 18,550 people. And we expect the majority of this growth to occur within the Dorchester and Thorndale area. The municipality is also an aging community, and this is consistent with trends that we are seeing across Ontario. But we also anticipate that the municipality will experience growth among the younger age groups as well. So what this tells us that there will be a need to ensure that there's parks and recreation opportunities for all age groups. We reviewed a broad range of trends that impact the types of parks and recreation opportunities that municipalities provide, as well as trends that influence what people are interested in. So we won't go through each of the trends tonight, but just to touch on a few of the highlights. People are putting a greater focus on community health and wellness, and they're looking for things to do to stay active in the community. But this isn't just specific to hockey, soccer, and baseball. People are looking for more of a variety of physical activities, including a growing popularity of unstructured activities, as people have a greater preference for drop-in activities that fit within their own schedules, rather than committing to registering for programs. In the parks and recreation sector, there's also a big emphasis on inclusion and access, as parks and recreation opportunities should be available for everyone, regardless of their income, age, ability, orientation, or background. And the pandemic has certainly impacted how people participate in parks and recreation activities. And it's certainly highlighted the importance of parks and recreation, not just from a physical activity perspective, but also from mental health and social perspective as well. Thames Centre provides a range of parks and recreation amenities and spaces, including physical parkland, indoor spaces such as the arena and gymnasiums, to sports fields, hard surface courts, playgrounds, and more. And when we get into the needs assessments, we'll be looking at the supply and distribution of these facilities to determine if you're providing the right mix of facilities, or are there gaps to address current and as well as future needs. In addition to what the municipality provides, there are also facilities provided by non-municipal providers, such as schools and the Conservation Authority, as well as amenities in adjacent municipalities. So these providers will also be considered as a part of the needs assessment process. In terms of public consultation, we worked with staff to promote the master plan and to encourage residents to get involved using tools such as the municipality's website, social media, posters, word of mouth, and newspaper advertisements. We engaged residents through various consultation sessions, including 2 indoor public open houses in Dorchester and Thorndale. As well as we held a community survey, stakeholder focus groups, staff workshops, and council interviews, as well as written submissions. And once the draft master plan is available, there will be additional opportunities to receive feedback and to test recommendations before it's finalized. So the community survey was active for 6 weeks, and its purpose was to collect input on participation preferences, priorities, as well as satisfaction levels. We received 115 responses from across the municipality. And we also asked respondents to complete the survey on behalf of their household. So in total, the data that we collected represented over 270 people across all age groups, from children, youth, adults, and older adults, 50 plus. The survey was available online as well as in print, and we had hard copies available at the community centers, at the senior center, and the library branches. We asked the public what parks and recreation activities their household participated in. The most popular activities are at the top of the graph here. The top results being the unstructured and passive activities, like walking and hiking for leisure, going to special events, and enjoying parks and open spaces. As you move down the list, you'll see more of the organized activities such as ice sports, baseball, and soccer. And towards the bottom, you'll see more of the niche activities that are more common among certain age groups, like skateboarding and disc golf. We asked respondents if there are barriers that are preventing them from participating in parks and recreation activities. The most common barrier was the lack of desired programs or facilities, followed by the program not being offered at a convenient time, as well as the lack of free time. So as we move through the master plan process, we'll be looking at at what strategies that the municipality should be considering to minimize these types of barriers. Respondents rated what parks and recreation opportunities they felt were important to their household. And then they also rated their level of satisfaction for the parks and recreation opportunities that are currently available in the municipality. Respondents felt that all these areas that we tested were important, starting with indoor recreation facilities being their top level of importance, trails, outdoor recreation facilities, and parks, and open spaces for unstructured uses. Satisfaction for each of these areas were slightly lower in each of these areas. So what this tells us is that their expectations are not currently being met, and that there's room for improvement, particularly for open spaces for unstructured use, which has the largest gap between the importance and satisfaction levels. Respondents also identified whether they supported or opposed additional public investment to improve existing facilities or build new ones. So the top priorities were facilities that supported unstructured and passive activities, such as nature trails and paved trails, as well as indoor walking tracks and acquiring parks and open spaces. And again, as you move down that list, you'll see more of the facilities for the organized sports and the more niche activities. Stakeholder focus groups were also held. So we held 3 of those with community organizations to provide input, to share their experiences, as well as to identify potential improvements. So we held 2 virtual sessions with sports groups, service organizations, and others. And we also held an in-person session with members of the Lions Senior Center. In addition, we circulated a stakeholder questionnaire to all community groups to collect input from any organization that wasn't able to attend the session, or if there are groups that did attend, but they wanted to submit additional input. We also held workshops with the frontline staff as well as with the management team, and we undertook interviews with each member of council. And the purpose of these sessions was to gather local knowledge and experience from staff and council, as well as to create buy-in for the master plan. So having reviewed all the public input that we received, we heard a number of common themes that we'll continue to be mindful of as we prepare the master plan. Residents are proud of the range of community services and facilities that are offered in Thames Center. Specific mentions included the parks and the trails, community centers, sports fields, and programs as well. There's a strong demand for casual and unstructured activities for residents of all ages. Requests were made for a variety of facilities and amenities, including trail enhancements, indoor pool, improved parking areas, arts and cultural spaces, basketball courts and fitness center. And requests were also made for pickleball courts as well as a velodrome. And it was suggested that community services and facilities should be balanced between Dorchester and Thorndale, with also consideration given to needs for residents in the rural areas. Other key themes included enhancing communication and marketing of community services and facilities was suggested to raise awareness about what's available in the community. And community organizations and volunteers are viewed as a strength in the community. But at the same time, concerns were raised about the ability to attract and retain volunteers, particularly among the younger demographic. And continuing to support established organizations was also suggested by groups to ensure that they continue to be successful. And the municipality staff were highly valued in the community, but requests were made for customer service at the Thorndale Community Center. So in terms of next steps, we'll continue to move forward with taking all of our background findings and consultation inputs to undertake our analysis for parks, recreation facilities, and service delivery. And from there, we'll be developing our recommendations together with an implementation strategy that will prioritize each recommendation based on short, medium, and long-term priorities. All this information will be compiled into the draft master plan. And once that's ready, it will be available for the public to review and to provide feedback on when we come back to council after the summer. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Mayor and members of council for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dennis. So now, does anyone from council have any questions that they would like to ask of Dennis? Councillor Crockett?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say thank you to Todd and Dennis. This was a lot of work that you undertook, and I hope that the results are really able to shape something for us going forward. I personally was surprised to see that unstructured activities was so high, considering that we have really good facilities for structured activities, but I guess that's the market coming out of COVID, and people have a wide breadth of interests. I was really happy to see the consideration to rural needs. I know that was something that we chatted about. Although the focus of growth is in Dorchester and Thorndale, we do have a number of hamlets in the community that, you know, have some little things going on, but perhaps could have more. And overall, I think, and this showed, is that we do need to just do a little bit better to showcase what we have. But the support of our great service groups, one member of which is here for later, I think should be applauded because that was well recognized, and I think really imperative for the success in our community. So thanks, Dennis and Todd. Looking forward to the next phase of the report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Smyberg.
Thanks, Dennis. Todd, I just had a couple of questions. Of course, I would like to have seen more people respond to the survey. I'm not a stats person though. So is that statistically valid in terms of the findings from those surveys to be applied to the plan?
It wouldn't, the number of responses wouldn't be statistically significant in terms of applying that to the entire population. But it does give us an indication of what the public thinks. And when we combine that with the information that we received during the public open houses, as well as the stakeholder focus groups and staff workshops and counselor interviews, all of that combined will help to shape the input. We can also look at other communities of similar size and things that they're experiencing to bring into that discussion as well. So our hope is that when we bring back a draft master plan, be able to test that the public will come out because there'll be tangible recommendations, and usually there is something more for them to feedback on. And but we're happy that the people that did participate did, and the combination of consultation techniques give us a good picture of what's going on.
Thank you. I'm happy if you're happy. My second question is, I know it's really important to take a look at other municipalities that provide maybe some different services than Thames Center, but I just wanted to know, for the purposes of the study, how far out does that extend? Is there a certain radius that you take a look at in terms of looking at other communities, and does it include the City of London?
Yeah, so we will look at all communities, certainly in terms of its impact and who serves your community in addition to yourselves. We will include London as well to look at what they're providing and what you don't want to duplicate services that your residents may be using, and vice versa. But broadly, we look at trends and best practices right across the province and bring that to the master plan as well. We have undertaken over 400 recreation and parks plans. And so we have a strong background to bring to this plan itself. We want to make sure that it's a community-driven plan, that it is right for Thames Centre. At the same time, we'll obviously look at, as Dennis mentioned, the communities immediately surrounding you, including the City of London.
Great. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Heeman?
I was struck by the reoccurrence of the interest in additional walking trails and paved walking areas. I was wondering if your work will touch upon the trails master plan at all, or if there's some sort of reference to that, because I think it would be good to either look at where we can expand or at least track our progress.
Through you, Worship, we recognize that the municipality does have a trails and cycling master plan. So we have reviewed that, and it continues to provide a good guide for the municipality to develop the trails system. And we often hear that a lot of comments about trails when we undertake these plans. There's certainly a lot of support for continuing to grow the trail system. So we will be undertaking a review of how far the municipality has come in terms of your trails master plan, and we will be looking at, are there new opportunities to continue to develop that trail system.
Yeah, one of the things we should say too on that is that during COVID, we saw certainly a surge of people coming out and utilizing trails. We think that will continue now that people have sort of gotten hooked on using trails and getting outside, and whether it's with their family or by themselves, just to get out. So if there are opportunities or areas that we think could be bolstered or improved beyond what your trails master plan identifies, we'll point those out. Certainly we see in communities of your size opportunity within existing parks, especially larger parks, for having internal trail networks to give people an opportunity to have a little bit of engagement around a park and have accessible trails that connect the various park features.
Thank you. Councillor Lockie?
Through your worship, with respect to the open houses, I just have two questions. So did we have a good turnout? And how did we formulate the information received from the open houses into your conclusions?
Yeah, so we had two, as Dennis mentioned, we had two in-person public open houses, one in Thorndale and one in Dorchester. They're both fairly well attended. I think we had probably 25 people to each one, give or take. But we were busy really the entire time discussing their input. We had them put sticky notes on boards, asking them various questions. And then we also had comment sheets for them to fill out, as well as dialogue with ourselves. Dennis and I also met with the Line Seniors organization to get their input to make sure that they were engaged in the event that their members were unable to attend in-person sessions. So overall, we felt that we had excellent turnout, and it was better than we had anticipated, given that there still is some caution by people about coming out in person with COVID still not being completely over.
Thank you. I just have one question going back to the recreational trails and pathways. And I know you've touched on this a little bit, but you have a very important and somewhat important 90%, but then satisfied or somewhat satisfied down at 73%. Were any specifics identified? Was it a matter of expansion or condition, or do you have any light on that?
Yeah, so through your worship, we did hear comments around both those topics in terms of improving what you currently have. Some comments we received related to developing more pathways within your parks, potentially paving some of those pathways was suggested, as well as creating more connections within your communities as well. There was some specific suggestions about ensuring that there are walking linkages between sidewalks to certain parks, or greater connections to the outdoor recreation complex, for example, was one of the suggestions that was made as well. So as we get through the needs assessment process, we will be taking a look at some of those where some of those connections could be strengthened, as well as potential areas where consideration could be given to enhancing the quality of the existing pathways and trails.
Thank you, Dennis. Are there any other questions that council would like to ask at this point? Okay. Then I want to thank you very much for your presentation, Todd and Dennis. That's very helpful. So council, we have a motion before us that the Community Services Master Plan update provided by Monteith Brown Planning Consultants and Tucker Reed and Associates be received for information. Moved by Councillor Heeman and seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? Okay, thank you. That motion carries. So we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes of the May 29th meeting. And I wonder if I could have a mover and a seconder for that, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Smybert and seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? Thank you. Motion is carried. We'll move on to the item number 7 on your agenda, the consent excuse me, the consent agenda. Items listed under the consent agenda are received for information in one motion. Council members may request that one or more item be removed for further action. Are there any items members would like to be removed for further action? Deputy Mayor Smybert?
So it wasn't actually to poll for any further action, but just a commentary on the residential property tax comparisons for 2023. I thought that was a really good report. And I want to thank staff for taking the time to do that. I think it's a good news story for the residents of Thames Center.
Thank you for those comments. All right, so may I have a mover and a seconder for the consent agenda items? Councillor Lockie moving and seconded by Deputy Mayor Smyber. All in favor? All right, that motion carried. Thank you. So we move on to item number 8 on the agenda. The first one is 8.1, the division of fence cost sharing bylaw, and we'll ask Ms. Michaels to report.
Good evening. This report recommends a cost sharing bylaw be considered to deal with situations where a new boundary fence needs to be constructed or an existing one needs repairing between adjoining properties. Currently, the municipality operates under the Line Fences Act, which was legislation put in place many years ago to manage disputes around boundary fence maintenance on rural or agricultural lands, including livestock, keeping the livestock within the fences. The act does not apply to determining the location of a boundary line or building a privacy fence. That's more of a civil matter. Over the last 7 years, there have been no requests for fence viewings in the municipality. The majority who contact the municipality are disputing the location of a property line or construction of a privacy fence in residential areas, which the act does not apply to. Adopting a cost sharing bylaw for boundary line fences would eliminate the need to appoint fence viewers. Currently, that would require a minimum of 3 fence viewers to attend one fence viewing. They would mediate disputes, the type of fence, the apportioning of the costs, but instead provide a process of it being resolved civilly between property owners, is what the bylaw is recommending. If and when these disputes do arise, it makes it a more efficient process for the municipality. And there's also cost savings for the property owners because they're not paying the amount of the fence viewers attending the property or the mileage that is currently in place. Many municipalities have taken this approach, including 2 local municipalities that were consulted during the review. This report and attached bylaw were also reviewed by all directors in the departments of Thames Center, including building and bylaw, and no one offered any concerns. Nothing was expressed. If council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those at this time.
Council, any questions? Councillor Crockett.
Through you, your worship. I just wanted to express that I did have a resident flag some concerns around this. Their concerns was pretty much along the lines of, there's a pretty small fee to have the fence viewers go out, where there could be a large fee associated with having to go to, say, small claims court. So I just wanted to voice that. Overall, I think this aligns with our neighboring municipalities. And if there hasn't been any concerns over the past 7 years, I think neighbors seem to be working things out quite well amongst themselves. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Crockett. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay. Seeing none, then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder on the recommended motion as outlined in your report. Councillor Lockie moving, second by Deputy Mayor Smyber. All in favor? Okay, thank you. That's carried. Okay, moving on to item number 8.2 concerning risk management. Interim CAO 2%. Thank you.
Thank you, your worship. Through you to members of council, I have one report for council's consideration this evening, and it's with respect to risk management. There is a request for council's approval for a risk management policy, as well as an indemnification bylaw. So council had recently heard a presentation from Rick Orr, our municipal insurance broker, regarding corporate liability, personal responsibilities, and risk management. And during that presentation, Mr. Orr identified several areas of risk and liability exposure that are inherent in municipalities' regular activities. So as a follow-up, it's prudent for the municipality to look to adopt a risk management policy and an indemnification bylaw that would assist council and staff to identify risks, to determine appropriate means to mitigate those risks, and to minimize exposure to liability. It's also recommended that the council and staff strengthen its documentation in these areas. So with respect to the risk management policy that's being proposed, council needs to recognize that the ever-increasing costs of municipal insurance make it necessary to have and to implement a risk management policy, again, to identify and mitigate those risks that may impact the municipality's ability to operate and achieve its objectives. A draft risk management policy has been developed and it's attached to the report for council's consideration this evening. And in addition, the second document that we're seeking council's approval this evening is the indemnification bylaw. So this would be a bylaw that has been proposed and would provide additional layer of protection for members of council and employees, as well as local volunteers, committee members, and board members. It's important that council and staff understand that just having these policies and bylaws is not sufficient to protect the corporation and the governing individuals from litigation, and that careful, detailed documentation of all actions undertaken and the rationale for those decisions being made is imperative in order to demonstrate that consideration of relevant laws, human safety, and anticipated outcomes was given to the issue at hand. There has been, as I said, a draft policy for your consideration this evening, as well as the indemnification bylaw, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions that council might have.
Thank you. Any questions from members of council? Tom, are you raising your hand there?
Go ahead. You, go ahead.
Just wondering what the purpose of the indemnification is, seeing as I think personal responsibility generally is a good approach to risk mitigation, and indemnifying everyone, I think, erodes that. So I don't see how that advances our aims of reducing risk.
Through your worship. So the indemnification bylaw is put in place to provide appropriate protections, as you've indicated, against personal liability. And it's particularly indemnifies council and staff, as well as any local volunteers, when they're acting in good faith and where they have made decisions that are considered to be in the best interest of the municipality. So if staff or council are doing their job and taking actions and making decisions in what they believe is in the best interest of the municipality, and those decisions being made in good faith, then if they are personally sued, for not as the municipality being sued, but those individuals personally, this is, if they're acting in good faith, then the municipality, by indemnifying them, means that they would not have to incur additional expense or in order to defend themselves against those potential lawsuits. So it's not intended to be a carte blanche that people don't have to be responsible and don't have to undertake appropriate actions, but where you have particularly statutory authorities and roles and responsibilities that have been defined through a number of avenues, policies put in place. If you're following those policies, if you're making decisions, then this bylaw would suggest that those individuals shouldn't be personally liable for any decisions they make where they're acting in the best interest and acting in good faith for the municipality. And that's the reason that it's being brought forward for council's consideration, both for staff, council, as well as volunteer individuals that are on local committees and boards. Being able to continue to recruit individuals to sit on those particular volunteers. If individuals knew that they were going to potentially have litigation filed against them because of a decision that they made when volunteering their time and efforts, it may result in our inability to be able to also obtain those local volunteers and that assistance from those individuals.
Thank you. Any follow-up from that, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Smybert, you had a comment or a question?
I'll just thank you for bringing this report forward. And my question was actually the opposite of Councillor Heeman's. I was surprised that we didn't have an indemnification bylaw prior to this, and I can absolutely see the reason for having something like this, because we can't control sometimes what other people might do or say in our job of fulfilling making decisions and endorsing some staff recommendations. So yes, we have control over what we do, but sometimes we don't have control over whatever someone else thinks that we should have done.
Thank you. Tom, do you have anything further?
Well, I have problems with this policy because there are big financial implications. And in the report, it says there are no financial implications. So I don't think that it's consistent, and we're taking on those legal obligations and responsibilities. I think that creates moral hazard, and it does create an opportunity for significant financial expense. So I'd propose that we table this at the moment and look for a little bit more information before proceeding.
Thank you. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor Smybert?
I'm happy with the information that's been provided tonight, and I'd be prepared to move the recommendation.
Do we have a seconder for that report? For that motion? Councillor Lockie? Is there any other discussion before we vote? Okay, then. We have the motion before us then, as outlined, that report number CAO -005-23 entitled Risk Management be received as information, and that the risk management policy be adopted as proposed, and that bylaw number 65-2023 being a bylaw to provide for the indemnification of current and former council members, board members, and employees be presented to the council for enactment. So I'll call the vote then. So anyone in, all those in favor? Opposed? Right. The motion carries then. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. The next one will go to the Director of Planning and Development Services for PDS 034, request to purchase an unopened road allowance on behalf of Wendy Stockford at 1471 West Chesterbourne in Wabano. Mark, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to members of council. The purpose of my report is to consider a request by Ms. Stockford to purchase the municipal unopened road allowance, formerly known as Niles Road. And it's located on the north side of Catherine Street, opposite West Chesterbourne in the hamlet of Wabano. Ms. Stockford is the owner of 1471 West Chesterbourne, to which a laneway is provided over an unopened road allowance, namely Niles Road, to access her property. So she is the proposed purchaser of the unopened road allowance, and she was advised on a number of occasions that she was the owner of the unopened road allowance. It was, however, recently discovered through her lawyer that she only owns a small portion of the unopened road allowance adjacent to her residence. Just in terms of a bit of a history, back in 1995, she and her late husband purchased an unopened road allowance limited to the northerly portion of Niles Road. And so she was always of the understanding that she owned essentially the entire stretch going down to Catherine Street. And if you look at the location map that is included with my report, it graphically illustrates the area in question that she is seeking to purchase, that black hatched area between her existing property going all the way down to Catherine Street. So had she known that she did not own that stretch of land, she would have pursued this request that much sooner, as indicated in her letter. She also has pointed out that since 1996, she has maintained the southerly portion of the road allowance to which she is seeking to purchase at her own expense in terms of maintaining that area, the laneway, including landscaping costs. And considering there's no other point of legal access for her property other than this unopened road allowance, she is seeking to acquire these lands. And as noted in my report, Your Worship, recognizing that the hamlet of Wabano has no municipal services and that opportunities for growth are limited to infilling and minor rounding of the existing development pattern. In my opinion, there's no future for Niles Road to be constructed and opened as a municipal road allowance. And as such, it is my opinion, Your Worship, that this land should be declared surplus to the needs of the municipality. At the same time, Your Worship, there is an obligation for us to follow the necessary procedures that are set out in bylaw 65-2022, which is a bylaw governing any sale or disposition of municipal property. In terms of financial implications, there would be a financial benefit for the sale of the land. Net proceeds should be directed to the Transportation Capital Reserve to accommodate future capital projects. And also any applicable costs associated with this transaction, including legal, surveying, the giving of notice, should be at the expense of the purchaser. So it's my recommendation, Your Worship, as noted in the report, that the report be received, followed by that the unopened road allowance be declared surplus to the needs of the municipality, and that the sale of the said allowance be subject to bylaw number 65-2022 based on the procedures that are outlined in my report. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bancroft. Does council have any comments or questions? Councillor Crockett.
Through you, Your Worship. Having read this report, there's obviously been a bit of misunderstanding and a lot of back and forth over the past 27 years over this road. So I was just wanting to put forward the consideration to look at mitigating some expenses that Ms. Stockford had put into the maintenance of that road, if possible, without disrupting the whole process on that. Thanks.
Any follow-up to Councillor Crockett's comments? No?
Through you, Your Worship, in terms of mitigating those expenses, I'm not sure what approach the municipality would use to, undertake such measure. Yeah, I really have no comment to offer in that regard.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Seeing none, then, Councillor Lockie, sorry.
Just for my own curiosity, I'm just curious why we chose the transportation budget for the surplus.
Through you, Your Worship. So considering this is an unopened road allowance for the sake of accommodating a road, that was the vision way back when. And in consultation with the Director of Financial Services / Treasurer, we thought this was an appropriate category to apply any proceeds to that capital reserve.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, then, if we're ready to proceed with the motion as outlined on your agenda, I'd ask for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Crockett moving and Councillor Lockie second. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Now, the next one, Travis. 8.4, the Sidhu petition request for drainage works, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, councillors. Recently, we, the municipality, received a request for drainage works, Section 4 request under the Drainage Act for the property 3004 Westchester Bourne. This request came after, as you probably remember, we had a similar request several months ago called the Cassidy petition. An on-site meeting was held inviting landowners that may be impacted by this petition. This is an area with a industrial development is starting to grow some interest. And some of the landowners that attended this meeting decided that this would have been an appropriate time to join on to the Cassidy petition, which is in progress currently. I want to point out that there is very likely one more of these requests and possibly two coming from more landowners in this area, also looking to develop, working collectively to gain a sufficient outlet will benefit all owners that are looking to develop here. And one more item I would like to point out is during the meeting regarding the Cassidy petition, I was asked if Donnybrook Drive was going to be physically impacted, in which I said no. That answer is likely changing now with multiple owners looking for a suitable outlet. The drain is likely going to have to increase in size, which will now impact Donnybrook. And I will leave it there and answer any questions that council might have.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Crockett?
Through your worship, thanks. You addressed a couple of my questions that I already had in your report. The last one is, I know that you held the open house, but is there perhaps a third option to communicate to the neighbors of this project proposal, assuming that if this petition passes, it would become one project within the Cassidy drain to just, I don't know, collectively that entire corner become one big project?
Through you, Your Worship, that's essentially exactly what's happening now. There's this watershed community has really only one route to go for their drainage, and having all the parties attend the original on-site meeting was very beneficial because it's showing each party that in these cases, sometimes what can happen is when one party's not ready to go, we don't always design the drainage for everyone. In this case, it's we're going to make sure that everyone in this watershed will have the sufficient outlet that they're looking for.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, then, at this point, then, I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder for the report as outlined in on your agenda. Deputy Mayor Smyber, seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you. All right. The next one is for the Dorchester Lions donation. Call on the Director of Community Services and Facilities. If you're ready.
Through your worship, good evening, councillors. You have before you report CS 010-23 regarding an offer by the Dorchester and District Lions Club to donate sufficient funds to the Lions Senior Center in order to add a walk-in cooler to the scope of the Flight Exec Center expansion project. This item was identified as a desired feature to include by the original expansion project committee, but was ultimately removed from the scope along with other items in order to get this project within budget. Being able to add this cooler back into the scope at this time will allow the contractor MCI to include all required aspects within their purchases and project schedule. This feature will be of great benefit to the Lions Senior Center with all of the food and meal related events that Karen runs on a regular basis, and also benefit the Dorchester Lions with their various community events, which ultimately benefit the entire community. I'll also mention that I'm happy to see Lions President Gord Grooming here tonight to join us. Thank you for being here, Gord. As a result, this report has the following recommendations. That report number CS 010-23 be received for information, and that council accepts the Dorchester and District Lions Club's donation of $18,499 plus HST, which will cover the full cost of adding a walk-in cooler to the scope of the Flight Exec Center expansion project, and that a plaque recognizing this donation consistent with the sponsorship recognition program that will be established for this project be placed outside of the cooler. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Council, any questions, any comments? No? Seeing none, I think that's very generous. May I have a mover and a seconder for that motion? Councillor Crockett and seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. And then I guess, Mr. McDonald, you're up next regarding the dog park relocation.
Correct, yes. You have before you report CS 011-23 regarding a recommendation for the new location of the Dorchester Dog Park. The original dog park was forced to close when construction began for Royal Field last spring, as that construction site overlapped with the northern section of the dog park. We determined it best to solicit community input on a new location and those considerations via the open houses and the online survey, which were part of the department master plan update that Monteith Brown just updated you on. Unfortunately, we did not receive any input on location options through that exercise. I have since spoken with the student, the high school student at the time who initiated the Dorchester Dog Park, Tanner, and he was in agreement with the new proposed location. The location is still at the outdoor recreation complex, so at the same address, which was obviously the location of choice when the dog park was first constructed. It provides much better accessibility with adjacent parking and would be the same size as the original dog park. I have also, since the report was submitted, I had the opportunity to get the Middlesex County Accessibility Coordinator to do a site visit with me for this project and several other things we have in the works. And she saw no concerns and saw the value of that location as well. Furthermore, one of the new factors we took into account with this location is the wanting to avoid ever having to move it again. So obviously, this new location is right on the property line, so it's not in the middle of anything. When the parking lot was developed, the dog park area was also leveled to the same grade so that any future development around it will be brought up to the same grade as the parking lot and the dog park. So everything is set up for future planning should the future ever see a need with population growth for additional soccer fields or any other recreation amenities, then we're ready to accommodate more parking and amenities around the dog park. All fencing, signage, benches, and garbage cans from the original park will be reused at this location. As a result, the only real cost being a reinstallation of the existing fence, with that cost being able to be covered by a portion of our 2023 fencing budget. The fencing can be installed by the end of this month, and then once the grass has been established, we would be ready to open. The recommendations from this report are that report number CS 011-23 be received for information, and that council approve the relocation of the Dorchester Dog Park to the proposed new location at the outdoor recreation complex as specified in this report. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from council? No. I think that's great. I think your explanation certainly answers a lot of the questions that have come to me over the, so are we thinking sort of towards the end of the summer months then?
As long as the weather doesn't, well, if the weather is more like today, not like the last, yeah, ideally, yes.
All right then. Thank you very much. All right then. seeing that there are no other questions or comments, could we have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Crockett and seconded by Deputy Mayor Smyberg. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. And then I guess, thanks, Mr. Gurman, that. You are going to talk about the home of Boone Jenner banner as well.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Okay, you have before you report number TCSWOF 001-23 regarding local hockey star Boone Jenner. At the meeting last month, the Thames Center Sports Wall of Fame Committee made motions, which you can see word for word within the report, that would see a home of Boone Jenner recognition sign added below the flight exec sign at the southern entrance of that facility. The committee considered various options on how to recognize Boone and his career, ultimately deciding that this would be the most appropriate option to proceed with. After discussing the cost with our Director of Finance, it was determined that this recommendation should be considered as part of the 2024 operating budget due to lack of funds at this time with our current year budget. Hopefully by that time, I will have heard back from Boone or his family, as we want to ensure that they are in agreement and in favor of doing this. I haven't heard back as of yet. So as a result, the recommendation with this report are that report TCSWOF 001-23 be received for information, and that the establishment of a home of Boone Jenner banner to be hung outside the main south entrance of the Flight Exec Center be brought forward for consideration during the 2024 budget deliberations. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Pretty straightforward. All right, then. We have the motion. So do I have someone who would like to move it and second it? Moved by Councillor Lockie and seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? All right, that motion carries. Thank you. Right. So my report for the month, mid-May to mid-June, saw a number of activities and meetings that I was called on to attend. The first one was on Mother's Day weekend when Dorchester's Camp Bell had its first camporee since the restrictions imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The camp was full of scouting groups and their leaders, approximately 3,000 of them, from various parts of North America, and it was great to see this gathering take place again. I had the honor of bringing greetings to the campers and as well to assist Joel DeRoche in presenting the Governor General's Sovereign Medal for volunteers to Mike Gwalchme for his many long years of scouting in this area. Then after a postponement due to weather earlier in the season, May 25th saw the grand opening of and ribbon cutting of our exceptional new outdoor recreational facility, Royal Field, as one of a kind baseball facility right here in Dorchester. The weather cooperated and it was a lovely evening, and our MP Karen Vecchio was on hand to throw out the first pitch, and she did an amazing job right from the pitcher's mound. The remainder of the month included meetings of School Advisory Board Committee, Flight Expansion Committee, SCORE, which is the South Central Ontario Region Economic Development, and a number of meetings with some of our residents. This coming Wednesday, graduating students at LDSS will be receiving their diplomas. This is now a change from what was usually happening in the fall. And it'll be my pleasure to be there and hand out the awards made by the municipality for some incredible student achievements. Now, notice of motions. We have one here. 10.1 Environmental Advisory Committee. Councillor Lockie, go ahead.
Through your worship, environmental sustainability is something that impacts everyone, and improvement initiatives within the community, I believe, should be something that everyone should have the opportunity to be involved with. It shouldn't be just staff. As I've served the first 7 months of my term on council, I've gotten to know a lot of people who have both the passion and the expertise to drive positive change, and who have expressed interest in becoming more involved. So the purpose of my proposal is to provide a vessel for community members to come together to share ideas, to lead projects, and make recommendations to staff and council. I would encourage participation from 10 Center residences and from businesses. And I truly believe that this committee would further support our mission of working together to sustain and grow our community through quality services and responsible leadership. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Lockie. Is there any question or comment from members of council? Councillor Crockett?
Through you, your worship, Councillor Lockie, I think this is a great initiative. I just want to be sure that going into this, that part of the staff recommendation that comes forward is identifying what groups should be a part of this and extending an invitation to them to be part of it should they wish. Specifically looking at Middlesex Federation of Agriculture as my one recommendation. I've had someone already express that they would already show interest in it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crockett. Any other comments or questions before we move on? All right, then. So as outlined on your agenda, may I have a seconder and I'm sorry, a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Heeman moves and seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? Thank you. That's scary. Good job. Good job. Thank you. The next one is the tree planting plan, Deputy Mayor Smybert.
Thank you, Mayor McMillan. So this notice of motion follows the recent delegation that was before council. And taking a look at some other municipalities, there have been similar notices of motions or similar plans that municipalities have done some work on. Again, I think a lot of this work is already being done by staff. It's just a matter of being able to take that information and kind of conceptualize it in the plan. It's multifaceted in terms of it's across all different departments. It's not just one department. It's a good thing to do. Originally, when I saw Councillor Lockie's notice of motion about the Environmental Advisory Committee, I was wondering if it kind of fit underneath that, but I do think that this again affects different departments. It's more kind of staff initiated, although there could be a component of it that is done by the residents as well. But I still would like to put forward that notice of motion. Thank you.
Any comments or questions from council? Councillor Crockett?
Through you, your worship. I would just like to add a sub bullet underneath the protection of existing trees and add identifying heritage trees. Just so that's specifically mentioned as well. I know that request came from a resident a couple weeks ago. So just wanted to add that in there. Thanks.
Thank you. So could we have a mover and a seconder for the adjusted motion to add in the identification of heritage trees? Councillor Lockie and Councillor Crockett, all in favor? Thank you. Thanks, Deputy Mayor Smybert. Another good report. That's something that I think has been mentioned by many groups around here. Good to do this. Alrighty. Any new business that requires our attention? None? Okay, we'll move on to bylaws. The recommended motion is that bylaws 572023 through 662023 be adopted as presented. So I am looking for a mover for that particular item. Councillor Lockie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Smybert. All in favor? That motion carries. Right, moving on. Our next meeting will be Monday, June 26th at 5 p.m. here in the council chambers, followed by Monday, July 17th at 5 p.m. also in the county chambers. So I guess this is a wrap. So could I have someone move adjournment, please? Councillor Lockie, seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? Okay.